And here now, what are you gonna do now? I'm gonna bid on here now. Who bid $500,000 bid?
Welcome to the Legacy of Agriculture. This program will explore the past, present, and future of agriculture. We'll look at the people, products, and events that have formed its history. And now with today's guest, your host, Chris Bear.
Good Saturday morning, folks. It's your host of the Legacy of Agriculture, Josh Erickson. I am guest hosting again for Chris Bear. He is out of the office this week. Chris has taken some time to go out and see his family out in Idaho, and so we are pre-recording our episode. By the time this episode airs, we will be on the second day of the Granite Threshing Bee. And so in honor of that occasion, I've actually had a returning guest, Mr. Gary Griesse is going to come back and chat with us a little bit about what it was like planning the event and some of the opportunities that people will have at that tonight and tomorrow. So, Gary, how we doing?
Doing fine. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah. I figured you did well enough the first time. We might as well, right?
Yes. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear it. So, no, you've kind of been running around quite a bit these last couple weeks, I would expect.
Yes, we have. Basically getting ready. I also am in the John Deere two-cylinder club.
Okay, yep.
And we had to do our lineup of tractors and our people who man our booth over at the implement building. The Granite Threshing Bee and that kind of thing. I do just this thing is promote it as much as I can. We anywhere we travel, we put out our flyers.
Yep.
And sure enough, anytime we can hand out a card or talk to somebody, we love it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
It sounds though, so Gary, you're a retired teacher for those of us who haven't listened to our first episode with you. It sounds like you aren't that retired, at least to me.
Do you ever retire? You just put on a different cap. And sure enough, that's kind of what I've done. I still restore and I get involved with people, help them out, help them do things as far as getting their machinery ready, their tractors ready, and offer a lot of cheap advice. Let's put it that way.
Gotcha. That's good. And I think that one thing my grandfather has said to me many, many times, and he's kind of my hero, and he's someone who's worked in agriculture his whole life. He said, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And so it always makes me smile to see folks who go into retirement and still find a way to stay busy,
I should have collected small tractors instead of the big ones.
Yeah, that would have made it a little bit easier.
It would have made it a little bit, going to a sale and carrying a block from a tractor, and putting in the back of the pickup or a bunch of parts or helping somebody else. Maybe if I'd have chose a little bit lighter sport.
Yep.
So.
Well, I've had, at my time at Pfeiffer's, I've had to move a fair amount of classic tractor parts. And I always think it's funny when you go to lift up the tractor weights because they never look that heavy, right? It's always in your head. I can lift that. Yeah.
Right. And there was this time in my life that you could put the bolts in holding the weight on the wheel, but no.
I think that nowadays that might be a time long gone by.
The hoist helps a lot.
Yeah, I would believe that. So have you been restoring anything yourself for this threshing bee?
We're this year for the John Deere Club, we have the John Deere Bee and of course up the ladder, the early bee, the late bee, the 50, the 50, the 520, the 530, and then we go up to the 2510 and 2520. And I've got some machinery that I've done, in that era. And I've got my bee I'm getting out this week, and it's all restored with cultivator on, and that'll be down at the show. And I didn't get one done this year, and I wish I'd have had it a little more time, but things crept up on me. So I guess that one won't be here.
It does seem like things get that way, and summertime is a very busy season for a lot of folks. I think for a lot of folks in agriculture, you're getting things prepped for harvest, you're making sure that your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed. For our livestock folks, work never stops.
Right.
But you mentioned that you have several John Deere bees down there at the Threshing Bee, which is a free event for our listeners, by the way. Would I be correct in assuming that you'd be pretty knowledgeable on the history of the John Deere bee?
Pretty much. We started out in 1935. Some will say 1934, but it was actually fall came out with the 1935, and they were unstyled. And up in 1939, John Deere hired an engineer by the name of Drufus. They changed the front of the tractor, and they became basically the styled models, and they made them up till 1952.
So I got to pause you. Your unstyled versus your styled. Some of our listeners are in agriculture. They're going to know exactly what you're talking about. Your host here, who did not grow up in agriculture, I have to have you explain the difference there.
Very, very good. And the unstyled basically had the steering pedestal was wide open, and you could look right behind it was the radiator. John Deere was falling behind in a few areas, and they hired, like I say, an engineering firm, and they put a grill on it, and they came up with a fancier set of fenders and something that would appeal to more as a streamlined version of it, and this is called the styled version.
So will you have both unstyled and styled down at the Threshing Bee?
Definitely will. We'll have a whole line. If you want to see the history of the bee, they'll be labeled. Come by the John Deere area. You can see on Ed Wheeler Rowe, our founder of our John Deere Club, but basically you can see that whole row of tractors and, of course, a description of it. And then we have our historian, as they go through the parade at 1 o'clock. He will be telling a little bit about the history of them and that kind of thing. So,
gotcha. That sounds like a lot of fun. And so you guys have a specific historian whose job it is to research those tractors.
Yes.
That is fascinating, because here on the Legacy of Agriculture, preserving that history is something that's very important to us. And I think that one of the classes that I was privileged to be able to take during my college years was an intro to public history. And so for those of our listeners who don't know, there's a kind of separation in the field of history between your more academic historians. These are your folks who focus on history papers, they focus on researching in archives, versus your public historians. And people in the public history field have a tendency to work more in things like museums, and their job is to communicate and interpret our collective heritage, right? And help to pass that on to the next generation. And what's fascinating to me is the Threshing Bee is really this public exercise organized by people who are volunteers to try and pass that history down. So as we go into our next segment, I'm sure we'll be able to talk a little bit more of the nuts and bolts, but for the last minute of this first segment, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Pfeiffer's Auction and Realty. Pfeiffer's has sponsored this show for the entirety of its existence, and coming up in, I believe, a week or two, we're celebrating our 2nd anniversary. And so as we round the horn for 2 years of this show, we want to say a great big thank you to Pfeiffer's for all the work that they've put in making this history possible to share with you folks. They've got a wonderful auction coming up in August on the 26th. So make sure to stop by their Southern Dakota facility for that. And we will see you folks in the next segment of The Legacy of Agriculture. Thanks for listening.
Hi, this is Jasmine at Pfeiffer's Auction, Realty, and Land Management. Pfeiffer's offers multiple ways to bid and buy at our equipment and land auctions. You can bid online, in person, or place pre-bids before the sale even starts. By providing convenient bidding platforms, we make sure that you can buy the items or parcels you want the way you want to. Visit Pfeiffer's.com to see a complete list of our auctions. When it comes to bidding, go with Pfeiffer's. Nobody does it better.
Good Saturday morning, folks. This is the Legacy of Agriculture. I'm your host, Josh Erickson. I am a guest host this week. Chris is going to be out of the recording booth, but I am sitting here with Gary Griesse. Gary helps organize the Granite Threshing Bee. So we are pre-recording, but by the time this show airs, the first events of the Threshing Bee will have already happened. Things like the Friday night tractor pull will have been yesterday for those of our listeners. And we've got some events coming up today, this Saturday here, and tomorrow on Sunday. We'll chat a little bit more about the things that you can see at the Granite Threshing Bee in upcoming segments. But before we do, we wanted to go over a little bit of the theme. So Gary, as we were chatting in between segments, you mentioned that the Themen is going to be one of the featured tractors of this year, and that you guys have a second featured tractor as well. So why don't you explain to our listeners what a featured tractor is for the Threshing Bee, and then what they are this year, some of the history behind the specific ones you've chosen.
Mm-hmm. Granite likes to look at different makes and models, and sometimes we do what we call an orphan tractor. Somebody build a tractor, it might be a single production run or that kind of thing. This is we've hosted International before. We've hosted John Deere, Ellis, and pretty much all the major makes. This year we're looking at two specifically ones that actually our club owns. The Themen, and the Themen was produced in Iowa, and it was produced. You could actually buy a kit, and I believe the kits were around $108, and you had to put your own engine in. Most of these engines that were put in were Model Ts and the Model As with the self-start, and of course you'd get the kit, and you'd have an old an old car, and you'd go to the machine shed and you'd put together your tractor, and this was for minimal investment, and there's a few of the Themens around yet. We actually will have 3 down at the grounds. We're hoping more bring them in. We put out our flyers and that kind of thing to get them in. The second tractor we've got is the co-op tractor, and these were sold by local co-ops, and they went under different names and that kind of thing, but the Farmers Union Co-op was quite a tractor. The one we have is would actually go about 30 miles an hour down the road.
Really?
Yes.
You're kind of cruising, especially for that day. I mean, the speed limits are 50 miles an hour on the roads back then.
Mm-hmm. And I've talked to different gentlemen. Willis Hanna, for one, grew up running one, and several of the other members have grew up running them. They liked them in North Dakota because of the fact that they could do finish on crops and stuff, the dragging and that kind of thing. And he got to run one, and then he'd get to take it home and that kind of thing. But sometimes the machinery would wave so behind them you couldn't go total speed, so you'd have to shift them down and stuff. But if you're just running down the road and that kind of thing, and they were a high-geared tractor, and like I say, different parts of the country did like them. And they sold them right out of a local co-op. You could buy them for hundreds less than you could buy at your local implement dealer.
So if Josh is suddenly in the past and looking at a co-op tractor, where are these manufactured at that time period?
These were manufactured, I think it was Illinois.
Illinois, okay.
And there was several different places they were, but they were pretty much the same. And there was different of them. I know we've got the one that we've got out here is coming in, and they're going to be an E5 coming up from Hartford area. Fellow Collector has one of those, and we're hoping for a few more of them coming in for the day and stuff like that. But you just get around them, and if the owner's there, they're proud to tell you all the history about it, and that's kind of what makes Granite unique. We're not afraid to share the history. We're not afraid to talk about it. So,
well, and one of the things I mentioned to you before this show is that since COVID, we've gotten back to normal, but it does seem like, at least from my perspective, that some of those social events have not come back in full force to what they were before. And what's fascinating to me, at least looking at it from the auction perspective, is when I talk to folks who are live at our sales, they absolutely love being able to rub shoulders with their neighbor and have a cup of coffee. And so events like Granite are really this exciting thing, because a lot of folks after that time period kind of became shut-ins. And so this is an opportunity to go out and learn unique history about some of the things that have formed the basis of agriculture today. You know, we don't currently farm on Thiemens unless you're a tougher farmer than I would ever be. But it is the type of thing that it's a very important part of our past. And so I think that it's really a commendable thing what you guys are doing out there. So tell me a little bit more. These co-op tractors and these Thiemens, it sounds like their target audience were maybe less well-to-do farmers. Am I correct in saying that?
Or a second tractor. Remember, this was the time we're trying to get the horse situation taken care of.
Okay.
Some people don't realize it, but the horse came, there was some early adaptation of the tractors, but in this area especially, and not many people know this, but down at Dune, Iowa was the largest per charon horse production area there was. People from all over the world came to Dune, Iowa, and this is not very far from Granite. And sure enough, one morning my grandfather went in the barn and 3 horses were dead. You couldn't get horses. The horse breeding facility lost over 1,000 in a week. And so
was there a sickness that was going through them?
A lot of people these days believe it was West Nile.
Really?
And yes, and then the horses that survived were quite winded, weren't able to do the work. So in this area in particular, it might not be said in Illinois and all that, but I understand the disease was quite widespread, but a lot of tractors began to be sold and produced, and sure enough, that was one of the reasons my family adopted the tractor, and that was 1937 that outbreak in the disease actually happened.
Really?
So it was a scramble or get out of farming. That was the whole thing.
Well, in the 1930s, that's not exactly a time period when many farmers would have disposable income, right?
Right.
So to face a challenge like that at a time period when the economy is already suffering, I think it takes a lot of determination in order to make it, which is one of the reasons why I believe agriculture is such a fascinating field. There's a lot of different technology nowadays that we get to enjoy the benefits of. I mean, we have air-conditioned tractor cabs. That's a lot better than open stations, but for the most part, that toughness and that desire to make it still exists. And as markets shift and change, that kind of determination is going to be necessary, not just in agriculture's past, but also in its future.
Right.
So this Thiemen you're talking about was a kit. Was that the type of thing that you would have had on your farm? You mentioned your family was a John Deere family.
We had a neighbor had a Thiemen.
Okay.
We did have a neighbor, and there was some that put these things together. But there was a mass shift in agriculture at this time, and like you mentioned, we had just come out of the Depression, and add to that, in this area, there was also a tremendous hailstorm that just took the crops. I know my grandfather used to talk about the hailstorm. There was, hand-picked corn, and on 60 acres, they had two wagon loads.
Really?
And 3 wagon loads of oats.
How do you make do with that at that time period?
You stuck together and you survived. You even burnt the nubbins of corn stalks for your heat in the wintertime.
I would believe that. Folks, we're coming down to the end of our second section. Gary Griesse will be back for our third and fourth sections. We're going to talk a little more about the Granite Threshing Bee and some of the history behind those tractors. Hang tight.
Hey, this is Jasmine at Pfeiffer's Auction, Realty, and Land Management. Pfeiffer's offers multiple ways to bid and buy at our equipment and land auctions. You can bid online, in person, or place pre-bids before the sale even starts. By providing convenient bidding platforms, we make sure that you can buy the items or parcels you want the way you want to. Visit Pfeiffers.com to see a complete list of our auctions. When it comes to bidding, go with Pfeiffer's. Nobody does it better.
Good Saturday morning, folks. It's Josh with the Legacy of Agriculture, and I am coming to you from the Pfeiffer's Auction and Realty facility. My guest today is Gary Griesse, and we're pre-recording today. But by the time this episode airs, it's going to be airing at 10 a.m. on a Saturday. So for our listeners, today, you will have the opportunity to go to the Granite Threshing Bee. My guest Gary has been instrumental in helping organize this year's Threshing Bee. And Gary, what are some of the events that folks can still attend today that they'll be able to make even after the show?
Well, the somewhat of a mirror of the Saturday show, of course, is the Sunday show. Except we have a pancake feed and a pancake feed and a service on Sunday morning. But the demonstrations will be a repeat of Saturday. We have a parade each day at 1 o'clock. And if you haven't been to one of the parades, come and sit in our shaded areas and come on down. Remember, Granite is a free show, and we're one of the largest free shows there. We're expecting, if it's like last year's, we're expecting maybe 5,000-6,000 people, and just a fun event. And our concessions are very reasonable priced, in case you haven't been down. But anyway, just a lot of exciting things to go. There's a children's pedal pull. There's a quilt show going on and stuff like that in the lean-to for the ladies. We have some inflatables and stuff for the children, and the demonstrations are some of the best as far as I'm concerned. We have our sawmill operating, and the sawmill has a good trained crew there and stuff like that. You can stand in the shade of the building and watch the saw operate and the tractor chug and pull on it. We use all gas, some of the larger gas engines and stuff to run that. Corn shelling. We've got the threshing, of course. And then we've got the stock shredding and just baling and things like that are going on. If you've never seen a young child light up and they see the corn going up or the bundles being thrown in the threshing hopper and stuff like that, and then the grandpas and, of course, the even some of the yellow-shirted people like me that are the granite threshing people, just ask, bring your camera down, take some pictures. It's a pretty big event. And we just appreciate anybody coming out and just come and enjoy what we do.
You know, one of the things that's really cool about just sitting here listening, it's an all ages show. So from our very young folks, our future farmers, to our very old folks, maybe the people who have handed the reins off to their kids or grandkids, there really is something for everyone at this show. And it's kind of a unique way to try and connect the past with the present. And I think that that's pretty amazing, because some of those ways of doing things have changed over the years. I was chatting with a gentleman who was talking about how even since the 1980s, the style of farming has changed. So when we look back at that part of history, that's our lifestyle in this part of the world. It's something that's very important to the culture around here, agriculture is. And so I think that it's a very exciting thing. Tell me a little bit more. You said it's a free show and there's a pancake breakfast, so people can come, they can eat at your concessions, which you said are reasonably priced, is there a fee for the pancake breakfast?
It's yes, there will be a fee, and it's pretty reasonable as far
Perfect.
as those are concerned. I'd say the quality of the pancakes and the meal is about the best part. Steve over there does a wonderful job at it. He's been doing it for years, and there's people that don't eat pancakes all year and go to Steve's Pancakes.
That's exciting.
So a reputation is out there and that kind of thing. So, and if you're going to notice one thing about our show, if I have much to brag about, we do have a crew out there that really does a meticulous job of manicuring that place. And you'll find it's probably one of the cleaner shows around. There's people picking up garbage. There's people that have weeks ahead have done the mowing and the trimming and making sure everything is just there. I know the West Lyon FFA comes over and has a painting day. And there's just a lot of pride goes into our shows. And if you come and look at the tractors and that kind of thing, I've been to shows where yesterday they pulled it out of the Grove.
Yep.
The restoration on a lot of our tractors, there's a lot of pride taken into that. They look better today than they did back then.
Than they did on the factory floor.
Right,
yeah.
Right. And we just want you to notice that and come down and see our pride with us. And I talked to a gal last week, and she says, well, I've been up to Madison, and I've seen Prairie Village and that kind of thing. Well, I'm not going to say anything about Prairie Village. That's a wonderful show. Theirs isn't free.
Yep. And that's something that's exciting, right? I mean, I'm a good Dutchman. I like a good deal as much as anybody else. So.
There you go. But here's the deal. Come down to our free show and just come and walk around in our shaded area and that kind of thing. It's just a wonderful park environment to be in. And I'm sure you're going to fall in love with it. She had never been to our show.
Okay.
And she lives on the east side of Sioux Falls. And so I made sure she had the pamphlet and everything and where it was at. And hey, tell your neighbor if you want to come down. Bring all your friends.
Well, and I personally am very, very excited to go to the Threshing Bee this year. Folks, we're coming down to the end of our third segment, and we have to take a brief moment to thank our sponsors for this show. And then in our fourth segment, Gary and I are going to dive just a little bit deeper into some of the events and how you can contact and contribute to the Threshing Bee. But before we do, we want to say a quick shout out to Richards Repair out of Larchwood, Iowa. Richards Repair, they work on loaders, they work on trucks, and they do an absolutely phenomenal job down there. And so we want to give a great big thank you to Richards Repair. We also want to thank Pfeiffer's Auction and Realty out of Worthing, South Dakota. Pfeiffer's has provided this facility for us to do this radio show, and their sponsorship has allowed us to do the Legacy of Agriculture for nearly 2 years now. So we want to say a great big thank you to Pfeiffer's, and we will be back on our next segment of the Legacy of Agriculture.
Hi, this is Jasmine at Pfeiffer's Auction, Realty, and Land Management. Pfeiffer's offers multiple ways to bid and buy at our equipment and land auctions. You can bid online, in person, or place pre-bids before the sale even starts. By providing convenient bidding platforms, we make sure that you can buy the items or parcels you want the way you want to. Visit Pfeiffers.com to see a complete list of our auctions. When it comes to bidding, go with Pfeiffer's. Nobody does it better.
Good Saturday morning, folks. This is the Legacy of Agriculture. I am your guest host today, Josh Erickson, and my guest, Gary Griesse, is back again for the show. So Gary was on a previous episode, and he helps out with the Granite Threshing Bee. This year is your 41st anniversary. Is that correct?
That is correct. And it started in a little field, and I set up a threshing machine, and yeah, that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Next year there was a group says, we want to try this again. And it went over and more guests, and here we are 41 years later, and all the guests we have coming from all over the nation.
I absolutely love that. That is wonderful. So when we talked on our last show, you had mentioned that you had guests from all around. And even during the COVID years, I believe you said you had guests from Chicago. Is that correct? Was it Illinois?
We had people came in from Chicago. That there was nothing going on. We were one of 6 shows in the nation to actually go, and we never had a bit of problem having that. We had hand wash stations around we put up, and that we never heard anything back. We had a puller came into our pull from Saskatchewan,
Canada.
Yes, and we had people coming from the Canadian border, Duluth, and up in northern, up north of Fargo, just because they wanted to go to a show.
So Gary, you can say you organize an international tractor show. That's on your resume.
I guess so.
If you decide to come back from work or go back to work, you've got that line right there, buddy.
Right.
That's fun. So, as we're pre-recording this show, there will already have been a day, Friday, for our listeners, that things have been going on. There was a tractor pull, so yesterday, for those of you who are listening. And then tonight, you have a vintage tractor pull, and this is kind of an exclusive event, right? So who's going to be in that tractor pull?
Right. This is the old-fashioned step-on sled.
Okay.
We'll put some weight on it. We'll pull the little guys, little tractors, and then we put some more, maybe back an old tractor on it, and everybody lines up on every 10 feet and steps on the sled. And you can't go too fast because we don't want to have any accidents out there, but it's for 50 of the tractors that are actually showing at the Granite Threshing Bee.
So people are going to have the opportunity to go look at these tractors and these Thiemens, these John Deere Bees, these other display tractors, and then they'll be able to see these tractors not only run like they will during the demonstration and parade, but they'll be able to see these tractors actually do what they were built for, which is to pull.
Right.
That is fascinating.
They cannot be modified. They have to be in, basically the original tractor, so unmodified.
No one's sneaking a Detroit diesel into a Thieme, is what you're saying.
No. That will not happen.
Okay, well, as long as that doesn't fly. So that's going to be quite the event, and that'll be, so for those of you listening, that'll be tonight, Saturday, July 19th. And then on Sunday, you've got 2 other tractor pulls. Now, one of them is a garden tractor pull, I believe. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
And then we also have the kiddie pull.
So if you're a young person able to go to this event, or if you have little farmers on your farm, there's an opportunity this Sunday. You guys put on a service as well.
Right.
So, and I will say, for those of you who are listening, if you're religious, we encourage you to go to service. But if you want to try service down in Granite, you will have that opportunity. And afterwards, your kids can see a parade and they can participate in this kiddie tractor pull. Is that correct?
Right. And then we're followed by the garden tractor pull. And if they want to bring their antique garden tractor down and pull it, they can. We have a lot of children, that you can run them. But they'll get on that garden tractor and they'll have tongue-in-cheek and they'll pull that tractor down and when it spins, that's it, But, it's bragging rights a lot of the times.
Well, and I remember distinctly being a young person and doing those events. And this is maybe a few more years ago than I'd like to say over the radio, but I remember being a part of those pedal pulls and being able to show off the little trophy and to brag about how I did better than my brothers, and that was so important to me. So this is really kind of a point of pride for some kids.
Right. And one more I'd like to make mention of Burdell, Burdell Meyer, one of our members. He brings a bunch of tractors down, and if you want to drive a tractor, if you've never driven a tractor before, there'll be supervisors there, of course. We're not just going to let you go out in the field, but you can drive a tractor the first time, and there's no age limit on that. If you can turn the steering wheel, there's there's children that have never, ever been on a tractor before, and it's a pretty exciting event.
And that's really good too, because I know some of our listeners, while we're the Legacy of Agriculture, we cater mainly towards farmers. Some of our listeners are more like me, where they're city slickers. So if you want the opportunity to get in touch with some of your roots or your family's roots, if you want your kids to be able to be behind the wheel of the tractor, what day can they show up for that? When is the best time?
Both days. Both
Okay.
days. They'll have the Burdell will be having the tractors run and that kind of thing, and we'll have a kids pedal pull both days, and like I say, we'll block off the street after the parade and just let them go.
Knowing my level of driving and what it was like when I was a kid, that's probably a good idea to block the street off, you know? So I think that this is just a wonderful event, and this will actually be my first year able to attend. So I am just absolutely ecstatic. I've got several nieces and nephews who I hope to bring along with me, and I really do think it'll be quite the time. So one last question for you, Gary. If we have any business owners listening, or any folks who they want the opportunity to contribute to Granite, they want to try and help pass this history down, whether you're a small-time operator or maybe a larger ag business, how can they get a hold of you folks?
Well, I'll tell you, we've got a couple opportunities. First off, our concessions is the main way we make our money. So don't bring your sandwich down and expect us to smile at you, because our concessions are very, very reasonably priced, probably half price of any other show is. We make it on volume. Mm-hmm. And we don't overcharge on water. We don't overcharge on pop or a walking taco or anything like that. But as far as businesses are concerned, we have the Gazette. And the Gazette actually, we print all the names of the businesses who do any contributions and that kind of thing. Now, for me, I put a couple extra hydrants in a couple of years ago, and I just don't hire anybody. I go to my Gazette and who contributes to Granite. Mm-hmm. If there's tires to be sold, or if there's cars to be serviced and that kind of thing, veterinarians to be had, I go to the ones that are contributing to us. And so if you want to get your name in the Gazette, very reasonable to contribute.
How should they contact you if that is one of our listeners is interested in
go
that?
Down to granitethreshingbee.com and look at our website. We've got our treasurer, we've got Daryl's name in there and that kind of thing. And shucks, if we got a yellow shirt on and you're down there, we'll tell you and we'll point you in that direction.
Perfect. Well, folks, if you're listening, we hope to see you today at the Granite Threshing Bee. It'll be going on all day, or tomorrow. And we will be back next week with another episode of The Legacy of Agriculture. Gary, thank you for joining me again.
Well, thanks you for having me. I love to be able to come and talk to you folks.
Awesome.
Thank you, Fifers.
Have a great day, folks. We'll see you next week.
Here now, what are you gonna do now? I'm gonna been on here now. Who bid $500,000 bid?
We hope you've enjoyed today's edition of The Legacy of Agriculture with Chris Baer, sponsored by Pfeiffer's Auction, Realty, and Land Management. Call Pfeiffer's at 605-836-2277.